Hello there, everyone. Welcome to another session of the Google+ Platform Office Hours. Today, we're going to be doing an overview of the REST APIs, which are a major component of the Google+ Platform. So this is another one of those kind of 101 sessions to get you started on developing with the REST APIs if you've been interested in them but haven't had a chance to develop on them yet. And I'm your host today. I'm Jenny Murphy. I'm a developer programs engineer here at Google. I spend a lot of my time working on the Google+ platform, and the REST APIs are actually the area I spend most of my time focusing on. And I have a couple people who have joined me today.
Hi there, I'm Alan Furstenberg. I am a developer from New York. Mostly I develop with the Hangout API, but I also do some work with the REST API.
Yeah, hi, I'm Martin from Germany. I'm studying computer sciences, and I do a lot with the REST API as well.
Great. And thanks a lot for joining me, guys. Otherwise, it'd be really lonely here. So what we're going to be doing today is I'm going to be going through some slides, and some demos of one of our starter projects. And then I'm going to be fielding some questions that you guys asked. And if you have any questions, there's a link to the announcement thread that should be on the post you're seeing. And just go ahead and put your questions there, and hopefully we'll get to them. So without further ado, I'm going to dive in and start telling you about the REST APIs. So the Google+ Platform REST API Edition. This is a little drawing below here with all the cool arrows on it. That's what we're going to be talking about. It's the Google+ Platform, and the REST APIs are part of it. I guess the red arrows, because they kind of have the center ring, kind of a core part of it. And so what is the Google+ Platform? So before I can really dig into the REST APIs, I kind of have to explain how they kind of hang together with everything else. The Google+ Platform has a few major components to it that are largely independent but can work together in many cases. So there's the REST APIs, which are the way you access data that is on Google+. So if you're writing another application, you want to read data from Google+, this is how you do it. There's also the plugins, which are probably the ones you're most familiar with, because you've probably seen the +1 button in a lot of places, and hopefully you've seen the badge elsewhere also. These go on web applications and are a way that you can actually insert data into Google+ via shares. And finally, below are the really fun Hangout apps, and these allow you to write interactive applications that are real-time collaboration between people who are participating in a Hangout. Today we're going to be focusing on the REST APIs and how you can access data that's already on the Google+ platform. Yep, today we will REST APIs. So what are the REST APIs really about? The REST APIs are primarily about accessing public data on Google+. So it allows your applications that you write, whether they be web applications, mobile applications, whatever, to be able to access the data that's on Google+, that users have created via kind of a language-agnostic, platform-independent way. And in addition to public data, there is a very small amount of private data you can get to right now, and which we're always looking to expand. We're always investigating new cool things we can add to it. And all of that data, which is private to users, is protected via OAuth 2.0. So this allows your users to authorize you to access data on the Google+ platform that's not necessarily public. And that covers the API surface. But there's a lot more to the REST API offering we have. We have recommended client libraries. So these are client libraries that we built that make use of the REST API, and the intent is to make things a lot easier for you. So when you're developing, you don't have to worry about a lot of the boilerplate stuff. And I'll be describing those in a little more detail later. And client libraries, they're cool and all, but whenever you work with a new framework or a new client library or something like that, there's a learning curve. And we have some starter projects which make that learning curve a lot easier to get over and get you something running right away. And I'll be demoing one of those at the end of this discussion. So let's get back to the API surface. What can you access? I mentioned public data, but what does that really mean? So you can see a post on the screen. This is just a picture of an orange that I posted that got a little bit of buzz. I guess I got people excited, but I just used it to play with the API because it demonstrates the things you can get to at the REST API right now. One of the things you can access is public fields of profiles. So any fields that I've made public on my profile are going to be exposed via the REST API. In addition to that, you can see public activities. So the activity contents, any objects that are attached to that activity, plus ones, that kind of information, the reshare count. You can access all of that about existing activities on Google+, assuming they're public activities. And finally, one other entity you can access right now. You can access the comments that are associated with an activity. So if the activity is public, you can see all of the comments because those comments are public by association. So now that you know what you can access, how do you actually learn how to use it? The reference docs are a great place to both start and then to return to as you're doing your development. And one of the things that makes our reference docs really cool is they're not just a list of methods and attributes and that kind of stuff. We have code samples in some popular languages, specifically Java, Ruby, Python, and PHP. Little code snippets that show you how to use it in a realistic case for each one of our methods. And then if you want to dive in right away, we have this API Explorer that's embedded right into the reference docs. So all you have to do is scroll down and you can use it right in front of you. So let's take a look at it. Here are the reference docs. If you just go to developers.google.com/plus/API, you'll land here. Let me zoom in so you can see a little better. They're organized in kind of the way you'd expect, by entity, and within each entity we list the methods you can run. So we're going to look at people get because it's a really simple one. And when you get here, you'll see the kind of stuff you would expect. You'll see the structure of the URL because it's a RESTful API, the list of the parameters, and here's the interesting stuff. We have little code snippets. Let me get it focused on there. We have code snippets in each one of those languages, and when it will keep track of your favorite language, the last one you selected, but you can pretty easily switch. Oops, the menu shifted over, probably from the browser zoom, but now it's a Python snippet. Pretty cool. And right below that is the API Explorer. So we can really easily try it. So let's try the people get API. So I'm going to go over and grab my profile ID, which you can get from the URL of your Google+ profile, and we can execute it. And below this little window has appeared the REST representation of my profile on Google+, all those public fields. And this is a really cool way to get started and start to see what kind of information you have access to on the APIs, but it's also really useful when you're troubleshooting later on to see, it's kind of as a sanity check to see what's really coming back from the API. And I end up using the API Explorer a whole lot when I develop on the APIs. It's one of those tools that kind of never gets old. So previously I was talking a lot about accessing the public data via that API Explorer field on the reference docs. And so far all I've really talked about is that public data. But I mentioned some private data before. So you can actually access one piece of private information via the Google+ REST APIs. And that is somebody's identity on Google+. So you have your third-party application, and you want to be able to, for example, access their profile. This is cool and everything, but if they have to type in their user ID, it doesn't really work. So what we allow you to do is use a placeholder, me. And me can be anyone, usually your user. And then your user is prompted with an authorization page that allows them to authorize your application to convert that me into your profile ID. And then you can use that as a developer to access all the other public information that they've created. So let's take a look at it in action. Zoom in a little more so you can see better. This is the people get method we were looking at earlier, same window on the reference docs. And I'm down here at the API Explorer in the bottom. And there's a little switch on the right side we were ignoring before. It's the OAuth dialog. So we hit this, and it's going to allow us to use OAuth to authorize with the user, who's in this case me. So I'm going to be authorizing the API Explorer to find out who I am on Google+. And OAuth uses scopes to determine the specific permissions you're requesting. In this case, plus.me is equivalent to my identity on Google+. So let's hit authorize. It pops up an authorization prompt, which is actually in a different window, but I just authorized it. You have to trust me there. And now that we're authorized, we can execute, and we can see below that I have done a request for people/me, and what I've gotten back is my profile on Google+. So I've now given the API Explorer access to my identity on Google+, and what the API Explorer does is just dumps the response. So it sent it back to me so I can see it. Pretty cool, isn't it? So what actually happened there behind the curtain? I hit some buttons, and it looks kind of like some magical stuff happened. So what happened there is the client, which is the API Explorer, sent me an authorization request. And that was the pop-up that you actually didn't see. And I told it that it could have access. I granted it authorization to find out who I am on Google+. In the background, the API Explorer then sent that authorization grant in the form of a special code over to an authorization server at Google, which responded with an access and a refresh token. And this happened behind the scenes. So your application will have to do this when you're doing the OAuth flow. After that, the API Explorer used that access token that it received to hit the resource server, the Google API server for the Google+ APIs, and it got back the protected resource. In this case, my public fields on Google+, which revealed my identity. And this is just kind of a small little sliver of all the stuff that OAuth 2.0 provides, because it has all sorts of cool different flows for installed apps and client-side apps like JavaScript apps. But you really don't need to worry about this too much right now. It's really important that you understand how this works later on as you're developing your application, but you don't need to worry about it to get started, because our client libraries take care of a lot of this stuff for you. They're pretty neat. So what all do they help you do? They help take care of all that OAuth stuff, all that token exchanging and that kind of stuff, and also doing like exchanges for refreshing the tokens when they time out, that kind of stuff. So it takes a lot of that burden away from your application code. It also handles all the marshalling and unmarshalling of all the data that's provided by the API. Caching is another important feature that the client libraries provide, which can save you a lot of time developing those features yourself. And there's actually a whole bunch of other stuff I'm not going to list here that the client libraries provide. And we have them for a lot of different languages and platforms. We have them for .NET, Go, Git, Java, JavaScript, Objective-C for iOS developers, PHP, Python, and Ruby. They're all at different levels of completeness. A lot of them are in what we call beta, which, as you know, means it's pretty polished already. So we recommend that when you're developing using the Google+ APIs or any other Google APIs, you check out the client libraries. They'll save you a ton of time. You can get them at developers.google.com/plus/downloads. So client libraries are great, but with any framework or client library, there's a learning curve. And we want to get you started really fast, right? So what we've done is we've packaged up these starter projects. And the intent is to make your awesome idea easier to get going. So what are the starter apps? The starter apps are really simple applications that access the APIs using our client libraries, and they implement a lot of our best practices around how we do OAuth and how we use the API. So the idea behind this is you can get running, you can get some base foundation of code running that accesses the APIs, and then you can hack away at it and make it your own. So it's a great foundation for whatever awesome project you want to do. We have them written for 4 popular languages: Java, Ruby, Python, and PHP. And within those languages, we also have them written for many platforms in many cases. For example, in Java, we have a web application version that's like a generic WAR. We have one for App Engine, because we love App Engine. We have one, a command line example, and we have an Android example. And you can also get them at that downloads page. So let's take a look at the Java Starter project. I'm going to shuffle some screen sharing around and bring up a terminal. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see better. There we go. So I'm at a place where I've downloaded the Google+ Java Starter and unzipped it. Comes in a zip file. Pretty easy to use. And we're going to take a look at the command line one because that will involve less window switching. But they're all just as easy to use. So let's go into the command line directory and just take a look at what's in there. There really aren't that many files in this directory. There's like 15 files or something, and some of them are like IDE files for Eclipse and stuff. The core of it's really small, and actually there's some VI swap files in there too. There's really not a lot to it. So it's really easy for you to get started and then to understand what's going on. There's just not a lot of code to look at, which is always great for examples. So let's take a look at the README. The README has the instructions on how to use this project. So all we really have to do is set up authentication. This walks you through going to the Google API console and getting your OAuth credentials set up. Because as a client of the Google+ APIs, you're going to have to set up a project and some other stuff. It's pretty easy. It's just a few clicks, and these steps will walk you through it. And once you've done all that stuff, all you have to do is take a few pieces of information, your client ID, your client secret, and your API key, and put them in this config.properties file. So let's go ahead and do that. Apparently I already have it open in an editor. There we go. Edit anyway. So there we go. Let's go replace these things. I've already gone ahead and grabbed some credentials from the API console to save a little time here. So I'm just pasting them in now. Oh, hey, Alan. There's two Allens. Oh, one time's out. So I'm pasting the credentials in, and in general, never share the client secret with anyone. I'm just sharing it now because it's a demonstration, and I'm going to be going and revoking these credentials afterwards. So if you ever actually do leak them out by accident, which happens, they're pretty easy to revoke. So now that we've added those three things there, if we go look at the README again, it says that once we put them in there, all we have to do is compile and exec :java, because Maven's really cool. It does all the dependency management and stuff for us. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're compiling our starter project. This might take a little longer the first time you run it, because Maven has to go fetch those dependencies.
Jenny, going back to the keys, can you also discuss how you're going to be dealing with those keys if you're distributing something using JavaScript?
Sure thing. So that's the client-side flow, which is a little bit different than the server-side flow. I'll be sticking to the server-side flow for the demo, but I'll loop back when we're done and explain some of the differences between the client-side and server-side flow.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yep. Okay. Going back to that terminal, here we are. So now that it's all compiled, we run it. So I'm actually going to switch the screen sharing real quick to show you what it popped up. It opened Chrome and displayed a OAuth window here. So this is what we missed before on the API console. This is the application that it's told Google to pop up this auth flow so that I can allow it access. So I'm going to allow it access. And because it's command line and not a web app, normally you'd use like redirects and stuff to get this special code back. We're going to have to use the very sophisticated copy and paste. So I'm going to copy from there, go back to my terminal, paste that code in, and what we can see now is a whole bunch of API calls happening. And that's all the starter project is. It's really easy to get going. So we've now, even just pasting in a few lines of code, just those keys, we now have a running Java application that's using the APIs. So if I was building a command line app or some other kind of server-side Java app, I have a really good foundation. Maybe I'll merge the code I have in already that's going to use the APIs, or I'll just use this as a starting point. And that's it. That's a quick demo of the Java Starter app. It's that easy to get going. So, Ellen asked a good question before. What about, how is the client-side flow different? So client-side applications, like ones that run in JavaScript on the web browser, such as Hangout applications, which I imagine is why you're interested, they work a little bit differently. Because we have that client secret, we can't keep that client secret, we can't expose that to the user, because then they would be able to masquerade as our application. So for client-side flow, what we do is there's a few different components. We have a JavaScript origin, which you set in the API console, which I guess I can pull up real quick. All right, so here's a project in the Google API console. This project is called API Project, and I'm showing you all sorts of stuff about it, so I'm going to be clearing it out later. But here we can see that I've created some client IDs for applications. This one's for web applications. One of the things you'll set when you have a JavaScript application that's going through a different OAuth flow called the client-side flow is you'll set a JavaScript origin. And this is how we guarantee that only your servers are running it. So you'll put your domain names here. And that, as well as redirect URLs. So this is where Google will send the user back after they've completed the OAuth flow. So you'll just set these to your applications, the domains of your applications, and that will guarantee that only you are allowed to send someone to the OAuth flow, and only you're allowed to get the redirect back. And then there's a couple other differences because the client secret kind of gets left out of the equation, and what you lose as a result is you lose the refresh token. So that means you're only going to be getting these access tokens, which only last for about an hour. And to refresh them, instead of doing a refresh flow as part of the OAuth spec, you'll actually just be going through the authorization flow again. So what you'll be doing is you'll be bouncing off of a Google web page. So there'll be kind of a little redirect bump that happens every hour or so. And hopefully that explains it. The easiest way is to, if you really want to understand this well, check out the JavaScript client. There's a JavaScript starter included too, and that will make it make a lot more sense. Because most of the other ones use the server-side flow, because that's just more common in general. Cool. So that's it for the.
Okay, so the REST APIs. Oh no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying. I was just going to ask if there are any more questions in the room before I went to the post.
All right. Some methods return an ETag field. So I think it's for caching, right? So it changes as soon as something of the content changes, if I understand it correctly.
That is correct. So the ETag is, I'm trying to remember where that came from in the spec. Because the activities, for example, the activities API is an implementation of the activity stream specification. So some of these tags are hanging around from that, and I think that might be one of those fields. So in general, in regards to caching content, we recommend that you pay attention to all the cache control headers and stuff we have set. So pay attention to those first and foremost. The clients that we provide will take care of that already. In addition to that, there's also the ETag, which is kind of the next level up on ability to see when things have changed. So if you're writing an application that's kind of sucking down all the data, you're going to be pulling the APIs a lot. And what you can do is you can use this thing called fields, the fields parameter, which allows you to only pull certain fields back. So you get a much smaller chunk of data. And you can only look at the ETag, and then you can use that to slightly more efficiently see, especially more bandwidth efficiently, see when something's changed, to see if you need to do the bigger request.
And does the ETag include all fields? So, for example, if someone +1s an activity, does the ETag also change? Because the +1 count changes?
Yeah, the ETag represents, is unique for all the content within that response object. So anything that changes in there will update the ETag.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Cool. Okay. So I've seen a few requests on there asking when we'll have more extensive APIs available. Specifically, write access to the stream. We have a lot of, we're always working to expand the APIs that are available. But we're kind of taking our time. We want to do this right, so we're being careful, because a lot of us have built applications on other platforms before, kind of had the rug pulled out from under us. We really didn't like that. So we want to make sure that all the APIs we release are going to be sticking around, and we're honestly still kind of figuring out how we want some of these APIs to work, because we care about a lot of things, in addition to people building awesome applications. We care a lot about the quality of content on the stream. Google Plus has a really high quality content in the stream right now. We want to make sure that stays the case. There's a lot of other reasons, but we're still working on a lot of these APIs, and once they're available, we'll let you know when you're good to go on them. But they'll be awesome, I promise. I also see a few posts, comments in the stream that are feature requests that don't really have to do with building software on the Google Plus platform. They're about things like the iPhone application and things like that. Those are more questions or more feature requests that are related to the Google Plus product as a whole. So when you're on Google Plus, you'll see a little send feedback link. It's going to be in one of the corners, depending on what language you're viewing the page in. For these kinds of questions, go click on that send feedback link. We do read the feedback. You may not get a response for everything you post, but we're definitely reading it. People are reading all of it. We're aggregating it. And we are paying attention. And that helps us best prioritize what stuff we're implementing, because there's only so many of us. So we have to prioritize the stuff we implement. So definitely you send feedback. We're paying attention to it. And I see a couple of questions about frozen +1 counters. So I haven't really been saying a whole lot on this. I think there's some forum posts. I think I recognize some of your names from the forum. I think I've talked to you there before. We are working on this. We think we've resolved some of the issues that should be related to specifically discrepancies between the counter value and the values in Google Analytics and Google Webmaster Tools. But if you're still seeing problems, I'm going to loop back and try and see if we can get to the bottom. There might be more than one problem involved in this situation. So we're still rolling out the first fix. Hopefully that will take care of everything. And then if that doesn't, I'll be looping back with you guys to make sure everything is good. But just hang tight. This one might take us a little while to figure out. It seems like one of those complicated ones.
Buried in one of the comments was a question that kind of talked about the quota limits for the REST API. Do you want to talk about the quota for it a little bit?
Sure. As you may have noticed recently, all of your applications out there that you created, which formerly had 1,000 free quota, free calls per day, are now have 10,000, a lot more. So we recently bumped up the base quota, and that's so that you guys can get started doing development more easily. But we can understand that especially when you launch applications, you're going to need a lot more quota, especially really cool things. I've seen a lot of really cool stuff out there recently. And I can tell that a lot of them probably using a lot of calls in the back end to do their cool stuff. So in the API console, there's a link that allows you to ask for more quota. Those generate a ticket that a lot of us in the team are looking at, I included. So you'll probably see a response from me or one of my teammates not long after you post it. We're getting responses much faster now. There was a time when we were a little slow, and we kind of ironed the kinks out of our process. So we should get back to you in a business day or two. We've been pretty good lately. We're pretty much on top of it now. So you should hear from one of us in a business day. And once you've done that, depending on how much quota you request, we have to go through a different process to get that quota granted to you. And this can take a little while. This could take a week, potentially. So hang tight. You'll get a response from us. telling you to hang tight. Please follow those instructions, and continue polishing your app or wording other cool applications. And we'll be getting back to you when we can give you more quota. But if you want the request to go fastest, I forgot the most important part. How do you make your request go faster? If you're requesting quota, please include a link to a privacy policy that satisfies, that just tells us what data you're collecting and what you're doing with that data. And retention policy, destruction, all that kind of stuff. Just tell us what you're doing with the data, and link to it on that little form. That's the most important first thing. Second one, have a working demo. This is not always possible. Some of them require accounts and that kind of stuff. If there's an account that has to be set up or authorized, please include information about that account in the little comments box. And we'll bounce back and forth and get that worked out so that we can see it in action. And we realize there's some applications that we can never see in action, like, for example, academic projects that are just pulling a lot of data on the back end. We'll work with you to make sure that we understand exactly what you're doing. Okay, Doc. So we're actually going to be taking next week off of the office hours probably, but we'll be back the week after. So and we'll have some really cool stuff to talk about then. So keep happy hacking, everyone. You know where to find us in the forum, on Google+. We hope to see you there. All right, bye, everyone, and thanks so much for joining me, guys, and everyone else who has questions and everything. Bye.